When I heard the cop yell, "That's trespassing," while standing on my porch, I knew it was over for Karen. She had no clue the county just swore me in as the new sheriff, and frankly, I wasn't in the mood to explain it nicely. Let me back up. 3 days earlier, I pulled into my ranch, a 15-acre property I've worked, patrolled, and protected for years, only to feel a weird jolt and hear a loud pop. My front left tire was destroyed. I stepped out, expecting a nail or pothole, but what I found made my blood boil, an actual police-style spike strip laid right across the entrance to my own driveway. Attached to a stick nearby was a handwritten sign. Private HOA enforcement. Do not enter at speeds above 5 miles per hour. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculously stupid that I didn't know whether to be angry or impressed. The HOA here had always been annoying. Too many rules, too many nosy neighbors, too many fines for dumb things like excessive humming during lawn care. But this was next-level crazy. And everyone in town knew exactly who was behind it: Karen Miller, the self-declared queen of the HOA board. She once fined a guy $150 for letting his dog bark twice in one day. I drove around the spike strip, limping on my ruined tire, and pulled into the barn, trying not to let rage cloud my next move. But before I could even check the damage, I saw it, an official-looking yellow envelope taped to my front door. It read, "Notice of violation, reckless driving on shared HOA path." I live on a ranch, not a cul-de-sac. I don't even share my gravel road with anyone. The shared path she referred to was my private driveway, which runs from the highway to my barn. I stormed into the house and called the HOA hotline. Karen answered with her sugary voice. "Oh, it's you," she said, sounding like she just tasted sour milk. "We've had several complaints about you speeding near Lot 9. The board voted and we're issuing a $500 fine for safety violations." I asked her if she had lost her mind. Lot 9 was my equipment barn. There were no other houses, people, or even goats near it. The bylaws allow for shared use of entrance paths if 60% of the community votes on it, she added. And we did. You weren't there for the meeting. That's not my fault. She hung up. I stood there stunned, my hands trembling with fury. How could they possibly claim access to my land? The next morning, I walked the property line and found little pink flags leading from the HOA's side of the neighborhood to my east fence, flags marked future communal area. Were they planning a picnic zone on my property now? When I went to remove the flags, Karen appeared like a horror movie villain, phone in hand, already recording. "Do not touch HOA-approved markings," she shouted. "You are on notice." She was standing 10 feet into my land. "Karen, I will not ask again. Get off my property," I said. "This is part of the shared right-of-way now," she responded smugly. "You can't bully me off public land." That's when she dialed 911 and said, loud and clear, "Yes, I need police assistance. There's a man here threatening me on HOA property." 2 squad cars arrived within minutes, sirens howling. The first officer looked at me, then at Karen, then back at me. "Sir, may I ask what's going on?" I calmly handed him a copy of my land deed, clearly showing the entire area, including Lot 9 and the road, were mine and mine alone. Karen kept yelling in the background. He sped down the road. He threatened my dog with gravel spray. The second officer tried not to laugh. "Do you have any legal documentation that this is HOA land?" She froze. "We voted. That's how HOA works," she stammered. The first officer turned to her and said, "That's not how trespassing laws work." She blinked. "But he's breaking the rules," she insisted. "He can't be allowed to threaten us with his large truck." The officers asked her to leave the property or face trespassing charges. She stomped off, vowing to take this to the top. The best part? I hadn't even told her yet. I am the top. You see, I'd been elected county sheriff last week after a weird turn of events involving the previous sheriff's surprise retirement. The ceremony was scheduled for the next day, and no one had told the public yet. Karen thought she was fighting a regular landowner. What she didn't know was that I was about to be her legal nightmare with a badge. That night, as I sat reviewing her HOA nonsense, my phone buzzed. Another message from the HOA board. Please be advised. HOA is considering fencing your driveway for public safety. I burst out laughing. Let them try. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Tomorrow, I'd put on a uniform and change everything. But first, I had to make sure my cameras were ready, because whatever came next, I wanted it all on film. Karen had picked the wrong rancher to mess with. And she was about to find out the hard way, on camera, in front of her neighbors, and under arrest. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Karen showed up with a wedding planner, on my land. I had just finished patching the tire damage from her spike trap and was adjusting my security cameras when I saw a white SUV roll up, music blaring, and out stepped Karen in heels, holding a clipboard like she owned the place. Behind her, a woman in all black stepped out with measuring tape and a Bluetooth headset. They walked around my front pasture like it was some kind of open event space, pointing at trees, talking about lighting setups, and mentioning the altar view. I stepped out and asked what the hell they were doing, and Karen, without missing a beat, said, "We're surveying for the Miller wedding. This spot offers ideal photo lighting during golden hour." I looked around. "This is my land." Karen tapped her clipboard. "Correction. The HOA passed a temporary usage variance for shared space overflow. It's within our rights for celebratory events." I blinked, stunned. "That's not a thing," I said, but she waved me off. "The board voted this morning. You should check your email." I did. And there it was, an urgent notice from the HOA claiming that due to my underutilized land, they'd invoked an obscure community celebration clause to temporarily seize it for the greater neighborhood good. That's when I realized Karen had roped the entire HOA into her fantasy. She wasn't just annoying now, she was dangerous. I drove straight to the town hall, but since I hadn't yet been sworn in officially, I couldn't file anything under my new role. I was just another citizen, for now. And Karen knew that. That night, as I reviewed footage from my property cams, I caught something that made my stomach turn. Karen and 3 HOA board members were walking through my barn, inside. One of them said, "We'll need to remove that junk if the food truck needs to park here." Karen replied, "Don't worry. He's too lazy to notice. He barely even uses this part." The barn they were talking about held my late grandfather's tools. He built this place with his own hands. It wasn't just trespassing anymore. It was personal. The next morning, I went to the HOA's community brunch to confront them. It was being held in the neighborhood park, with all the usual suspects in folding chairs, eating egg casserole and pretending their lives weren't crumbling under HOA drama. Karen stood up with her fake charm and tapped the mic. "I'd like to thank everyone for approving the new event site for my daughter's wedding. It will be the first HOA-blessed marriage under our new celebration clause." People clapped. I waited. Then I walked to the front. "That clause is illegal. You can't take someone's land because you want better lighting for Instagram." Karen smiled tightly. "Then maybe you should have shown up to vote." I raised my voice. "That vote was forged. That clause doesn't exist in the HOA charter. And by the way, you broke into my barn." Silence fell. People looked around. Karen blinked, then hissed, "You have no proof." I pulled out my phone and played the footage. Her face, clear as day, walking through my barn. Her voice, calling me lazy. One neighbor gasped. Another muttered, "Wait, that's his barn." Karen lunged at me, trying to snatch the phone. She missed. Fell face first into the fruit salad. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. It went viral before I even got home. But it didn't stop her. That afternoon, I got a notice taped to my door. HOA fine, unauthorized surveillance on community property, $1,200. My jaw dropped. She was fining me for recording my own barn. That night, a neighbor named Craig knocked on my door. We weren't close, but he looked nervous. "Hey," he said, "I probably shouldn't be here. But, look, Karen asked me to sign something last week. It said I was witnessing land abandonment. She said it was just a formality so they could mow your lot." He handed me a copy. It was a fake affidavit, claiming I'd left my land unused for over 60 days. "I didn't know it was serious," Craig added. "She said you agreed." That was the moment the false victory hit me. Karen was building a case to steal my land, and she almost had it. I was humiliated and legally cornered. She'd manipulated signatures, doctored meeting records, and twisted HOA rules like a lunatic with a clipboard. And now half the community believed I was just some cranky old rancher who didn't take care of his property. The worst part, I couldn't act yet. Not until the swearing-in. Not until I had the badge. But tomorrow, everything would change. Karen thought she humiliated me. She had no idea the next public event wouldn't be her daughter's wedding. It would be hers, in front of flashing blue lights, with me reading her rights, and her HOA world falling apart piece by piece. The next morning, I was setting up a new set of trail cams at the back fence when I saw flashing lights again. 2 squad cars rolling up my gravel driveway, tires crunching with that weighty sound that usually means something serious. Karen was right behind them, arms flailing, screeching like she'd just caught an escaped zoo animal loose in suburbia. "That's him," she shouted before the cops even got out. "He's on private HOA land, again. He's been threatening me and my dog and setting up surveillance equipment to film us." One of the officers, clearly confused, turned to me and asked, "Sir, can you explain what's going on here?" I kept my voice calm. "Yes, officer. I'm installing cameras on my own property because the HOA board, including her, has been trespassing and planting wedding flags without permission." Karen interrupted again, screaming, "He's trying to intimidate the entire neighborhood. That fence is a hate crime against community unity." The younger officer tried not to laugh. That's not how hate crimes work." The other cop turned to me and asked for documentation. I handed him a folder with land deeds, survey maps, timestamped camera footage, and a notarized statement from Craig, confirming she'd asked him to sign a fake affidavit. The cop took one look at the footage still loaded on my phone and said, "Wait, is that her, in your barn?" I nodded. Karen, realizing the video was being taken seriously, changed tactics instantly. "It's edited. He's tech savvy. He probably faked all of this. You can't trust someone who drives a truck like that." I swear the truck was still idling in the background like it had something to say. The officer glanced back at Karen. "Even if this was a public road, which it's not, your actions would still qualify as trespassing. And if he owns the property, which these documents confirm, then you're not allowed here." That's when Karen tried to play her next card. "He threatened me. Verbally. He said, and I quote, 'If you set one more foot on my land, I'll make sure you regret it.'" "That's a threat, right?" The younger officer asked. "Did he say that on camera? Or in front of witnesses?" Karen froze. Then she waved her hand. "Everyone knows how he talks." The cop looked unimpressed. That's not evidence. That's gossip." Then, turning to me, he asked, "Is there a reason this keeps escalating?" I finally gave him a little smile and said, "Actually, yes. I've been keeping quiet, but tomorrow I'm being sworn in as the new county sheriff." Silence. You could hear the wind brushing through the hay. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you're the guy?" I nodded. He smiled. "We were told a new sheriff was coming in, but we didn't know it was you. You're the one who caught that zoning scandal down in Ridgefield last year, right?" Karen's face turned to stone. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again, but no words came out. It was the first time I'd seen her speechless. The officer continued, "You do realize that if he's about to be sworn in, that means you've been calling the cops on the sheriff." Her eyes narrowed. "He's lying. He's bluffing. He's trying to intimidate me with some fake power grab." I said nothing. I just let the badge ID card slide slightly out of my shirt pocket. The cop leaned in and read it. Karen saw it too. Her hand flew up to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, then shouted, "This is harassment. You're not allowed to use law enforcement to settle personal scores." "I haven't done anything yet," I said calmly. "But you've broken several property laws, submitted fraudulent documents, and filed false police reports. And I haven't even gone through your surveillance violations yet." Karen, red-faced and fuming, turned and stormed off, but not before yelling back, "I'll have your badge taken from you. I know people. I went to school with the mayor's cousin." The officers shared a glance like they'd just walked out of a sitcom. That evening, just before sunset, I took a walk along the fence line and noticed something new. Small black domes mounted to trees along the path leading from Karen's backyard to mine. I pulled one down and looked closely, a disguised motion camera, still warm. She had installed secret cameras on my property. That was the final straw. I drove straight to the county building and submitted a report, not as a victim, but as an incoming officer of the law. I attached the footage, the devices, the timestamps, the complaints from neighbors like Craig, and the edited HOA meeting notes. That night, my phone lit up again, this time with texts from neighbors. "Bro, Karen just posted on the HOA page that you're being investigated by the FBI for impersonating law enforcement." Another message read, "She's gone full lunatic. Claimed you're using ranch animals for psychological warfare." I sat back, letting the screen light flicker in the dark room, and realized the power dynamic was officially shifting. Tomorrow, the badge would be real. And when that happened, Karen wouldn't just be dealing with the man she thought she could fine and humiliate. She'd be dealing with the law. Her lawless HOA games had run out of lives, and the final round was coming with flashing lights and iron cuffs. The badge was heavier than I expected, not in weight but in what it meant. I'd worn uniforms before, military, ranch work, volunteer rescue. But this one, stitched with my name and the word sheriff, felt like a loaded promise. By 8 a.m., I was sworn in with a firm handshake from the county judge, and every deputy in that dusty room knew exactly who I was and who I was about to deal with. My first act wasn't an arrest, though I had every legal reason to make one. It was a visit to the records department. I pulled every HOA document ever filed under Karen's leadership, and sure enough, the red flags practically exploded off the pages. Unauthorized amendments, illegible community votes, conflicts of interest where she fined homeowners and hired her cousin's company to fix infractions she invented. But it wasn't just paper evidence anymore. It was about the cameras she had installed on my property, 3 of them. Hidden in brush, camouflaged as solar lights, feeding into a cloud server registered under an HOA Gmail. Surveillance without consent. A felony. It was poetic justice that the woman who screeched about safety and neighborhood standards had committed more violations than the rest of the neighborhood combined. And now I had the power to act. But I wasn't going to knock on her door right away. No, I had something better planned. That afternoon, I showed up to the monthly HOA meeting, officially uninvited, of course, but this time I wore my uniform. Karen was already seated at the head table, chatting away with her usual clique of bored loyalists, including Bob, the treasurer who once fined a neighbor for parking too red of a truck on a beige-themed street. The room fell silent when I walked in. Phones clicked. People whispered. Karen stood up fast, her voice pitching high. "Excuse me, this is a closed session. Only approved HOA board members and residents may attend." I smiled politely. I am a resident, and I'm also the newly sworn-in county sheriff. So unless you're planning to find the law itself, I suggest you sit down. Murmurs of approval buzzed through the crowd. A few people actually clapped. Karen's lips curled. "You can't come in here and intimidate us with your badge. This is community business." "Actually," I said, pulling a thick envelope from my coat, "this is criminal business. Unlawful surveillance. Falsification of public records. Trespassing. Property damage. And obstruction of justice. Would you like me to read the list out loud or save it for court?" She laughed nervously. "You can't arrest someone for HOA violations." I took a step forward. "No, but I can arrest you for planting recording devices on private property, submitting fake legal documents, and filing 3 false police reports in the last week." I opened the envelope and started laying out copies of the charges, one by one, on the table in front of her. That's harassment," she stammered. "You're targeting me because I care about community values." Her voice cracked. I looked her dead in the eye. "No, I'm targeting you because you broke the law, and I've got over a dozen affidavits, video recordings, and physical evidence proving it." Then I turned to the board. "Effective immediately, this HOA is under investigation. You're not being shut down, yet, but all authority is frozen until the county's oversight report is complete." The room exploded. People who'd been silent for years started shouting. "So we don't have to pay fines anymore? Is my dog allowed to bark again? Can I finally paint my porch blue?" Karen shouted over them. "This is a setup. He's only doing this because I fined him for speeding." "Actually," I said, pointing to the projector behind her, "I'm doing this because of this." I clicked the remote, and up came the footage from her own hidden camera, pointed directly into my barn, the barn with my grandfather's tools. Her voice played through the speaker. "Don't worry, he's too lazy to notice. We'll use this space for wedding prep. We'll say it was abandoned." Dead silence. Her board members looked away. Some pulled out their phones and started scrolling like they weren't part of it. "Where did you get that?" Karen gasped. "That's illegal. That's my evidence." I offered. "Yes. Thank you." She spun toward the exit but stopped short. 2 deputies were waiting. I didn't even have to nod. They approached calmly, respectfully. "Karen Miller," one said, "you're under arrest for unlawful surveillance, falsifying legal documents, and misuse of HOA authority. You have the right to remain silent. You can't do this to me," she shrieked. "I am the HOA." Her voice cracked into a banshee wail as she was cuffed and led out, still protesting that her clipboard was county property now. I turned back to the room. If any of you have concerns, my office will be hosting a town forum this Saturday. No fines, no lectures. Just real conversations. Someone from the back shouted, "Can we bring barbecue?" I smiled. "Only if you drive too fast getting there." Laughter broke out. Relief filled the air like a pressure valve finally bursting. And just like that, the tyrant was gone. But something strange happened as I walked out. A man in a grey suit I didn't recognize was leaning against a car, arms crossed. He looked up at me, nodded once, and said, "You think it's over?" Karen was just the surface problem. Then he got in his car and drove off. I didn't even catch his plates. All I knew was, Karen was done. But the rot in this HOA ran deeper than I thought. And I had a feeling it wasn't over. I thought Karen's arrest would be the end of it. But as with anything that's festered too long in the dark, exposing it only reveals how deep the infection really goes. The day after she was booked, my office was flooded with messages, not from outsiders, but from within her own HOA board, anonymous emails, frantic voicemails, and one hand-delivered envelope left under my office door with no return name. Inside it was a single USB drive labeled, "Karen wasn't alone." I plugged it into the county laptop, half expecting it to be a decoy, but what played out on screen stopped me cold. Meeting recordings, secretly captured, showed Karen negotiating illegal favor trades with local contractors in exchange for HOA projects, landscaping, security patrols, even HOA legal representation. But the worst part, she had support. Bob the treasurer, Susan from events, even Len, the grumpy war veteran everyone thought hated Karen. Turns out he was promised a new fence and discounted medication if he backed her votes. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was a quiet coup of corruption disguised as neighborhood order. I stared at the screen and realized Karen was just the mouth. The system behind her had teeth. I called an emergency meeting at the community center, not as an HOA member, but as the sheriff. I invited everyone. No agenda. Just truth. By 6 p.m., the place was packed, every chair filled, people standing in doorways, kids sitting on the floor eating goldfish crackers and whispering, "Is this the one where the sheriff makes someone cry again?" I stepped up and didn't waste time. Last week, I was fined for driving too fast on my own land. Then I was trespassed. Then accused. Then investigated. Now, Karen Miller is facing 6 charges and a county investigation is ongoing. But this doesn't end with her. Gasps, murmurs, a few people stood, uneasy. "I have proof," I continued, "that your HOA board was running an illegal system of backdoor deals, vote manipulation, and property fraud." I hit play. The screen behind me lit up with audio, Karen's voice saying, "Don't worry, just get the permit through Bob. He'll backdate it. Len owes me a favor anyway." Then Bob's voice, "Let's fine him again. If he pushes back, we'll say it's safety related." The room turned into a furnace of outrage. Neighbors shouted. People demanded resignations. One man tore up his HOA violation slip and threw it into the air like confetti. Susan and Bob, who were seated near the front, tried to leave, but were blocked by the crowd. Then came the moment no one expected. An elderly woman stood up, Mrs. Henderson, the one who always wore oversized gardening gloves and stayed silent in every meeting. She held up a faded fine notice. "They told me if I didn't remove my sunflower garden, I'd be evicted," she said, voice trembling. "It was my late husband's favorite. They made me pull it all out." Someone else shouted. "They made me paint my door twice because burgundy was too political." The air buzzed with electric fury. I stepped back and let it all unfold. This wasn't revenge. This was release. After the chaos quieted, I made the final announcement. Effective immediately, this HOA is dissolved under emergency community review. Until further notice, the county will oversee all residential complaints, property boundaries will be restored according to original deeds, and all pending fines issued by Karen's board are hereby void. Applause thundered through the room. Some cheered. Others cried. And someone actually started singing Sweet Freedom off-key in the back row. Later that night, I returned home for the first time in what felt like weeks without tension hanging over me like storm clouds. My barn was quiet. My land was still. But just before I turned in, I saw headlights in the distance. A black SUV slowly rolled up my driveway, paused, and backed away. No plates. I knew it wasn't Karen. She was still in custody. But someone else didn't like that I'd won. The next morning, my deputy handed me a sealed letter. It had no name, only the words, "We warned you once." HOA power doesn't die, it hides. That should have shaken me, but it didn't. Because now I had cameras. I had witnesses. I had the law. And I had a community finally awake and paying attention. Karen thought she was untouchable. She thought fines and rules made her a ruler. But rules without integrity are just paper. And me? I'm not just the guy she tried to fine. I'm the man who made her finally answer for it. So the next time anyone in this county thinks of abusing power behind an HOA badge, I hope they remember one thing. This isn't just a neighborhood anymore. It's my jurisdiction now.